is my second time in Wild Digital. And what I always like about the Wild Digital is the amazing audios. We never feel like it's in a conference. We are in some kind of a playful zone. So that's very impressive. It'll increase the energy of all of us. So I think the time we have allocated for all of us is all of us here is around 20 minutes. So I don't want to spend too much time introducing all of us, all of my panelists here. We have Nizam here, who is a very popular person, Touch and Go. I think all of us from the Malaysia are using Touch and Go in one way or the other. We have Terence, who come from the VC side, and we have Ganglu, who come from TechNode. They are the media house who do all the research. So based in China, and he has a PhD as well. So in the next 20 minutes, I would like to cover in brief 4 to 5 different areas and topics. Precisely on, I think we have heard in the last speaker session, Southeast Asia has become the hotbed for investments with respect to tech and startups. So we would like to ask the experts here on how it is going. Is it sustainable? What are the future we see? Which markets is going next? And then I would like to get some insights from on the CEO here. What's happened? What kind of investments a wallet players have to make in order to sustain in the business, and then what kind of building blocks they have to make in order to see more unicorns. So I'll start with question to Mr. Ganglu. I think we are all aware and conscious of the fact Alibaba, Tencent are investing a lot, billions of dollars in the tech firms in the China and the other Southeast Asia markets. So imagine, for me, it's like they are building a garland of pearls in all these Southeast Asia countries in order to prosper better. So I would like to understand from Mr. Ganglu on can we call this Alibaba and Tencent as the new Game of Thrones happening in the Southeast Asia for the investments? What are your thoughts there, sir?
Well, the answer is I don't know. Yeah, I think it's, well, it's not really the trend. I think it's already happening because we see lots of, not just Alibaba, because we see in China we have BAT. So I think all the big guys, they're already playing some role in Southeast Asia, also in India. Right now, I think we got more and more people looking at Africa as well. So I think in general, I think not just for Chinese companies, not just BAT, the big guys, we also see the new Chinese unicorns that are coming here, like Toutiao, TikTok, or Kuala, the many like video entertainment apps that are very popular in South Asia. We also see many, it's sort of like startups, but like very strong. They have very strong in China. Even some of them actually they forget about China market. They come here, they only focus on overseas. So we see many like photo apps, mobile phones. Everybody know like Xiaomi. But even there's another example like OnePlus. OnePlus probably in China is not that well known in China, but they are very popular outside China. So I think that's it's already happening. But I think why it's happening, I totally agree with the previous speakers. So I think when we look at China, if you look at China 10 years back, we kind of copy from Silicon Valley. We copy almost everything. And most of them are very successful in China. So I think what's happening now, but if you ask me, our Chinese startups, if ask them, I think maybe 5 years or 10 years back, when Chinese startup pitch we see is always start with, oh, I'm doing this. It's like something like Silicon Valley. So always that's the conversation started. But right now, I don't see, I hear less and less this type of style because China has our own ecosystems. But now what's happened is sort of like copy from China instead of copy to China. So that's why I see in Southeast Asia, when I talk to startups, they always tell me, oh, we're doing something like, something like in China. So I think copy is not really the bad thing. The copy is like copy the model, but you have to learn how to quickly localize the product into your local market. So yeah, I think this is very, very exciting.
Okay, I think that's a very good point. Even though we take some of the business models, but what is really required is the innovation, the different value proposition, localization around it. So thanks for the inputs. So then I would like to ask Mr. Terence on, since you're tracking all the investments happening as a VC in all the Southeast Asia. So where do you think is the next big potential in the market? I mean, based on our research, I mean, we also track this, some potential markets like the Indonesia, Bangladesh is picking up, Cambodia, a lot of untapped markets, a lot to become under financial inclusion. So what are your thoughts there? And then which of the specific areas do you think the investments go in Southeast Asia? Globally, we see it's more of travel, and then fintech and financial services, e-commerce. So, but what do you see is the future coming?
So, we see Southeast Asia as very similar to China about, as you said, 10, 15 years ago, right? In the past, just look at the B2C, right, market in China in the past, and today where Southeast Asia is, it mirrors very similarly. Lots of money is pouring into that sector, and end of the day, the guys that raise the most money will eventually win. They will just wear down their competitors and all that. And I think in the past, so in that sense, we are following China, right, very, very closely. It's a copy and paste model, right? But increasingly, I think if you look at over the past few years, there's a lot of tech innovation coming out in China, right? We have seen some of our portfolio companies actually suing some global companies on patent infringement and actually won. So I think that is where China is heading towards, and I think that is coming out. There will be a lot of tech innovations coming out of Southeast Asia that will provide the next wave for growth in Southeast Asia. It's the B2C e-commerce or B2B commerce marketplace play will still be prevalent here, but it's going to see a consolidation in a lot of companies, and then they might see some high-profile failures coming along, but I think the overall scene is still very vibrant. There's a lot of money being raised into this part of the world, right? But the tech portion, as I had to emphasize, is something that we are looking at, and I think there are many companies just beyond in our backyard. I think in Singapore, we just invested in a company called RWDC. They are in they make biodegradable plastic, so they have patents and trade secrets protecting them. We have several other companies in Malaysia and Singapore that's in the tech space as well. So I think that it will be something that it will be very interesting to see whether Southeast Asia is able to produce really tech giants to give us the next wave of growth. And I think from a sectoral point of view, right, our geographic point of view, I think the easy answer to say, where is the next best place to invest is still Indonesia, just because of that population. But there are several up-and-coming economies like Vietnam, Thailand, and Philippines that is also powering the growth in this region.
Okay, thanks for that. So next, I go back to something very local. I think many of us are aware of the wallets that are being picking up in Malaysia. In my mobile itself, I have some 10 different wallets, apart from Touch and Go. And then we see around some 48 plus wallets in the Malaysia market. So, I mean, after having all these wallets and new players coming into the market, how do we sustain these customers? How do we retain them? What kind of investments from the tech side, increasing the experience, that's the whole thing about, the wallet players or the entities should have to do in order to be the winning in the race. So I would like to ask Mr. Touch and Go CEO what is the thoughts around there?
Thank you for giving me the hardest question. Okay, let's take a perspective on a few things, right? I said this a couple of weeks ago at Fintech Week that I think we got too many players in a very crowded space, particularly for a population of 32 million, more than 40 issuers of e-wallets. Why is this important? Because in China, for 1.5 billion people, there's 2 dominant wallets. And if you look at our partners Ant Financial, last year alone, they raised 15 billion in venture fund, right? Bigger than North America in total at 12.4 billion and 3.5 billion Europe. So you think about it, right? Scale is absolutely critical. Why? Because in China, one of the biggest things that is emerging as their way of showing the world that they have succeeded in fintech is that they have merged new retail, or what they call new retail, with payments. And this is creating a new lifestyle element into how consumers are making data-driven decisions, right? So moving offline to online, what Roger was talking about, entrepreneurship 5.0, is what's really happening in China at the moment. So people are putting a lot more money in moving into the tech layer. So if you think about it, half of those VC funds are going to tech, so that the tech layer makes your offline experiences so easy that you don't even need to look at your phone anymore, right? So if you look at that and how we're looking at it in Malaysia, I think the idea of working towards a zebra business model, which is completely sustainable, is the only way to go, because financial services and banking, for example, really needs to take over from those decision-making. So it's not about having banks or no banks. It's about moving cash to cashless, but in an environment where consumers are dictating the data decisions that they want to make, that will make their lives easy, right? And that interlocking platform is what we need to build in Southeast Asia, because the secret to this success is hyperlocality. You need to be very, very embedded in your area, your country, and the consumers that drive the businesses and the use cases in that location.
Thanks for that. I think another follow-up question to you on that, since you speak of financial services, which is something close to my heart. We see a lot of this virtual banks, digital banks, buzz in the markets around. Hong Kong is doing it. Singapore have an announcement. Malaysia as well. So what is the game plan for some of the financial service startups in order to admire or in order to achieve those virtual banks? Is it too unrealistic, or they have to build the customer first before they aim there, or what should be some of the steps they have to think in mind before they can aspire those big things?
Well, I cannot speak on behalf of the market, but I think there's a lot more to do before we jump into digital banks. I think if you look at it, I speak again on my partners and financials, 700 million active users, and they are largely an unlicensed platform, right? They are not a bank. They're encouraging people to actually use financial transactions and financial products, distributing more than hundreds of products on 100 financial institutions in China. Is it necessary to have a banking license? I don't think immediately that's required. What's important at the moment is, with a large user base, do you know what you want your customers to do with you? Do you want them to use more digital, or do you want them to actually have banking products and services? And I think this singularity of a value proposition is still unclear, which is why you have 10 wallets. And I think most of you would probably pick and choose the ones that will give you most value. I think we need to hit the value button as quickly as possible before we can find that scalability.
Okay. So I think we have some 5 more minutes left for the panel. So I would like to ask one last question to all the panel members, starting with Mr. Ganglu. So we have seen a lot of unicorns coming across the globe, and we are slowly picking up in Southeast Asia. So my question would be, how many more we can expect from more unicorns from Southeast Asia? In order to bring more unicorns from Southeast Asia, what are the building blocks and enablers which we can think of, or which should be considered in order to build more unicorns? It could be for a policy or a government or a capital, or have a nice business model. It could be anything. It's a question for all the panel members. You can start with you.
Okay. Well, definitely, I think we're going to see more. Yeah, I think to your questions, well, if you look at China, so I think basically China used to be what we call like market-driven. Market means because the populations, basically population means it's a massive market. So that's why if you look at like 10 years, starting from 10 years back, if we have most of like Chinese companies, why they are so successful? Because we have a market. Because we have so many people, so many potential users. So I think that's what's happening in Southeast Asia. Why China or some other players come to South Asia? Because we are looking at the populations. So I think that's the first thing to drive, basically to kick everything off. But the next stage, what we call a technology-driven, is because we copy the model, but when we localize that, then from micro innovation, then we do like a full innovations. So we are rely more and more, not just on the population, we are rely on the technologies. So then in terms of the technologies, first, I think very important is we need building infrastructure first. If you look at China, because I started like my media like 10 years back, but at the company it's only like 6 years, because at the beginning I don't see that many Chinese startups, good startups in China, China market. But what's happened around 2012, because the 3G, 4G came to China, then we see the infrastructure is ready, Then we build up the payment gateway, like Alipay or later on like WeChat Pay. So we have the payment systems. So once we have infrastructure, then you have the payment, you see e-commerce, then you see mobile e-commerce. Then you see all the business model in China right now built on the mobile space. So I think that's probably this kind of pattern is going to be repeat, or not maybe 100%, but maybe 80% repeat in Southeast Asia. So we're going to see more, that's for sure.
Okay. Thoughts on?
I think I agree with him as well that the infrastructure is a must, right? I mean, if you look at even just among our neighboring countries, right? Look at Singapore, Malaysia, then you go all the way to Indonesia. The infrastructure that we have in place, just talk about basic infrastructure like the traffic jams and all this. This I think needs to be solved, and once this is solved, there's a lot of unicorns to be built on that. Just look at logistics. I think logistics itself is also hamstrung by the fact that road infrastructures. It takes from point A to point B for delivery. In Singapore we say okay, it's probably an hour's delivery, but in Indonesia the delivery or the service guys is coming to service your aircons could be anywhere within today if you're lucky, right? So I think once you have solved that kind of issue, there's a lot of a lot of startups that can spring from there and build from there, right? Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand, once they solve issues like this, I think Indonesia is doing great. They just had that small mini train line that solves some of these issues. So I think once we solve that, a lot of things can be done.
Well, I'd like to solve the traffic problems in Malaysia with Grab. If you Grab here, we can talk about it. I think that's a great opportunity. I think infra is important. I think the other thing that's also important is that we work on developing our tier 3, tier 4 merchants so that we can actually build unicorn propositions around new retail. I think the idea of creating a steroid-enhanced VC model for selling coffee, for example, like they do in China with Luckin, 18 months into a unicorn, I think that's a model that has been now being implemented in Indonesia, and I think it's a model that's going to grow very, very quickly in Southeast Asia because we like lifestyle products. And I think the new generation of consumers will want to have a lot more of these type of unicorns that support the new lifestyle as opposed to traditional products that we have.
So I think that's an interesting input from all of us. Infrastructure is key, understanding your customers, the behavior. I think these are some of the key enablers. Coming to Malaysia, I mean, this is some interesting stats we found. The average mobile density or the average number of mobile devices with a Malaysian hold is around 3 devices. That explains a lot of things, how much adoption we have on the smart devices in the Malaysia community. And there is other stats which we see, like the average time spent by a Malaysian on the internet is around some 13.3 hours. I don't know whether they're doing Facebook or Tinder or checking emails, but that gives an insight that many of the potential millennials customers are on the digital tools or the digital platforms which needs to be tapped up. So I think with that concluding note, I'll say thanks for all of us. Just for the interest of times, there are further sessions. So thanks everyone for all of your inputs, and I'm not taking any questions from the audience for the best interest of times. Thanks once again.